If I could go back to my 30s, I would do many things differently with her. Not because I didn't love her, but because I didn't understand how fragile a relationship can become over time. But I'm 85 years old, and I can't go back.
We're not here to give advice or tell you how to live. We're here to talk about silent mistakes, the kind that don't seem serious when they happen, that can slowly erode even the strongest love.
My name is Carlos. This is my wife, Elena, and we have been together for more than 5 decades.
What we're going to share isn't about major tragedies or dramatic moments. It's about small decisions, unspoken words, and repeated attitudes that almost cost us everything.
This is what we understood too late. Too late.
When we got married, we were young and sure that love would solve everything. We thought that as long as there was affection, the rest would fall into place. Nobody told us about what happens later, when the years go by, when responsibilities arrive, when weariness accumulates and life stops being simple.
At first, everything was exciting. Building a house, raising children, working, fulfilling expectations. Every day was full, and that made us feel like we were moving forward. But over time, without realizing it, we began to live more for our obligations than for the relationship.
It wasn't sudden. There wasn't a big problem or an argument that changed everything. It was slow, almost invisible.
One day you realize that you have been sharing the same space for years with someone you love, but with whom you no longer talk about what really matters.
And that, when ignored, starts to take its toll.
For many years, without realizing it, I kept a silent tally in my head. I worked long hours, I paid the bills, I made sure nothing was lacking at home, and every time Elena asked me for something more, help, attention, or simply my presence, I thought to myself that I was already doing enough. I never said it out loud, but that feeling was there, slowly growing.
And I kept my own list too, though I never wrote it down. I raised our children, I cooked every day, I organized the house, I remembered dates, doctor's appointments, birthdays, problems that no one else saw. When he said he was tired, I felt like my tiredness didn't count, but I didn't say anything either. I just added another dot to that invisible tally.
The problem with counting is that, without realizing it, you start competing with the person you love. You no longer see what the other person feels. You only compare efforts. Who did more? Who gave more? And love, when it becomes a competition, begins to wear down.
Over time, I came to understand something painful. In a long-term relationship, there will be times when one person carries more of the burden than the other. And that's not unfair. It's part of walking together. But we wasted many years measuring sacrifices instead of taking care of each other. For many years, I thought the problem was that he didn't understand. That if I could explain myself better, if I insisted a little more, if I was firmer, sooner or later he would change. I needed planning, security, order. I needed to know what was going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month. And when he didn't respond to that, I became deeply frustrated.
And I, for my part, felt that she wanted to turn me into someone I wasn't. I was always calmer, more spontaneous, more of a go-with-the-flow person. For years, I thought that if she learned to relax, if she stopped worrying so much, everything would be easier. So, without saying it outright, I also hoped she would change.
We spend too much time trying to correct each other, as if loving someone meant molding them. Every attempt at change made the other feel inadequate, misunderstood, flawed, and that hurts more than we admit.
Over the years, we understood something essential. Our differences weren't flaws. They were simply different ways of seeing life. The problem wasn't being different, but fighting against it. When we stopped trying to change each other and started accepting each other, the relationship stopped feeling like a constant struggle.
I was always one to keep things to myself. I thought that staying silent was a way to protect the relationship, that it wasn't worth arguing over small details, comments that bothered me, or attitudes that made me feel ignored. I told myself it was better to let it go, stay calm, and avoid unnecessary conflicts.
And I thought that since she wasn't saying anything, everything was fine. I interpreted her silence as tranquility, as acceptance. I didn't realize that many times that silence was weariness, frustration, accumulated sadness. I carried on with my routine, unaware that there were things that needed to be talked about.
The problem is that what isn't said doesn't disappear. It stays inside. It accumulates. And one day, anything, even the smallest thing, can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Suddenly you explode over something small, but in reality, you're reacting to years of words that were never spoken.
Over time, we learned that speaking up hurts less than staying silent for too long. Difficult conversations don't have to be fights. They can simply be honest conversations. But it took us many years to understand this. After many years together, we began to live as if the relationship could sustain itself. We thought that, because of everything we had already been through, nothing could break us. We knew each other so well that we stopped asking ourselves important questions. We took it for granted that the other was okay, that the bond was still strong, even though we no longer nurtured it.
Our conversations became filled with logistics, schedules, bills, commitments, obligations. We talked about what needed to be done, but almost never about how we felt. Without realizing it, we stopped sharing thoughts, fears, and dreams. We lived under the same roof, but each in our own world.
The most dangerous thing about this stage is that it doesn't arrive suddenly. There's no clear warning sign. Everything seems normal, functional, but little by little, the relationship becomes cold, distant, mechanical. Not because of a lack of love, but because of a lack of attention.
One day I realized something that scared me. It wasn't that things were bad between us. It was that we simply weren't really together anymore. And that, when it drags on, can be just as damaging as a big fight.
For a long time, when we argued, I felt I had to win. That if I gave in, I'd lose. Every difficult conversation became a kind of silent battle, where the important thing wasn't understanding, but being right. And when you get caught up in that game, you stop truly listening.
I fell into that trap too. I started defending my points as if I were alone, as if he were my opponent and not the person with whom I had built a whole life. Every disagreement felt like a threat, not something we could resolve together.
The problem is that in a relationship, there are no winners or losers. When one wins and the other loses, the relationship loses. But it took us years to understand that. And during that time, we said things that didn't help, things that left scars.
Everything started to change when we stopped asking ourselves who was right and started asking ourselves what we needed as a couple. When we remembered that we weren't enemies, but partners facing the same problems from different perspectives.
Today I am 85 years old, and time feels different now. It no longer runs, it slips away. We have seen friends, family members, people we thought would always be there, leave us. Each goodbye reminded us of something we didn't want to accept when we were young. Time is not infinite.
As the years go by, Arguments lose their importance, and absences weigh more heavily. You begin to value things you once took for granted: a quiet conversation, a shared breakfast, the simple act of sitting next to someone who knows your whole story.
Looking back, it hurts to think about all the time we wasted fighting, measuring, staying silent, or living on autopilot. Not because it wasn't part of the journey, but because now we understand how precious every day we let slip by without taking better care of ourselves really was.
Time didn't make us perfect. It made us aware. And that awareness comes late for many things, but in time to be grateful that we're still here together.
If after so many years together we had to summarize what truly sustains a relationship, we wouldn't say it's romantic love, or passion, or even perfect compatibility. All that changes over time. What remains is the daily decision not to abandon each other when things stop being easy.
Love isn't about never making mistakes. Love is about recognizing when you've made a mistake and choosing to stay. Choosing to listen when it would be easier to remain silent. Choosing to care when you're tired. Choosing to respect even when you disagree.
For many years, we thought that loving was feeling. Today, we know that loving is also doing, making space, being silent, asking questions, making the effort to see the other person as they are, not as you would like them to be.
Perhaps this truth doesn't sound special. Perhaps it doesn't seem profound. But it's what, over time, separates the couples who survive from those who are lost along the way.
I am 85 years old, and I don't know how much longer we have. Nobody knows. But we do know that if we are still sitting next to each other today, it is not because we did everything right, but because we learned not to leave when it was easier to do so.
If you're listening to this and there's something you haven't said yet, someone you haven't listened to enough, perhaps you still have time. Not to do it perfectly, but to do it better.
We're not sharing this to teach lessons. We're sharing this because we learned it too late.
And because, perhaps, it might be useful for someone to listen to it a little earlier.
If this conversation stayed with you, you're welcome to leave a thought in the comments. Not for us, but because someone else reading it might feel less alone. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, from people who've lived long enough to understand what truly matters, you're welcome to subscribe and stay with us. Thank you for listening. Truly.